Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Corpies by Drew Hayes. So remember to like the video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So Corpies is a spinoff of the series Superpowers by Drew Hayes, and it takes place between books 2 and 3, and it focuses on Roy/Herschel's dad, Owen Daniels, aka Titan. Titan was one of the biggest, most famous, most beloved superheroes ever. Like, he had the great, family man reputation and all this stuff, and people loved him, and he's insanely powerful, so he was always called in to do work and stuff. But one day he kind of destroyed his reputation when he got caught having sex with another male superhero in public, like outside and stuff or whatever. And, it destroyed his marriage and destroyed his entire career because his entire image is based up, around him being a family man and his family and all this stuff. And then to do something like cheat on your wife and then, be gay at the same time, kind of caused his reputation to get screwed up. He ended up becoming basically a symbol for people other people in the LGBTQIA community who need, want and need representation in the superhero community and stuff like that. He became a symbol to them, but he didn't want to be a symbol or anything like that. And he, out of fear and shame and all that stuff, he fled. So it's 10 years later or more than that, I think about 10 years later or so. And now he wants to basically get back out there. He had an interaction with his sons, Roy and Herschel, and it kind of knocked some sense into him really. And he kind of realized it's not too late also. And, basically don't be a bitch. He's a strong man. He's supposed to be one of the, toughest people. So he can tough it out and, deal with the scrutiny of society and own up to his mistakes and own up to his life and, be himself unapologetically, unashamedly and all that stuff. So that's kind of where the story starts. It's him trying to get back into the game, trying to get back into the superhero community and trying to basically not necessarily fix his reputation, but, start again. And because at his core of who he is a hero. He wants to help people. He wants to be out there protecting people. And because of his level of strength and durability, he literally feels guilty that he's not out there helping other heroes because they could be, something that endangers them probably doesn't endanger him because of how powerful he is. So he feels like they need backup and he's not even helping out, his fellow soldiers in the field. So when he hooks back up with his old agent and stuff and tries to, get the ball rolling and try to get back out there and stuff, he kind of finds out no superhero team wants him because they either have issues with the scandal or just don't want that kind of publicity put on them, the extra scrutiny and stuff like that. So just for various reasons or another, he can't find a team to basically accept them. And he doesn't want to start a team and he doesn't want to run solo because the way, their pop culture and all that stuff work, if he runs solo, he'll never be on a team again and it'll probably damage his reputation more, even with the attempts of recovery. So the only real compromise he has is to work with the Peers group, which are corporate sponsored supers who basically do rescue work. They're they do stuff, level higher than cops and firefighters, but a level lower than what regular superheroes and stuff would be dealing with. And they aren't certified, so they're not certified superheroes. They're just literal public servants. They're just, fire and police and all that stuff on steroids, crowd control and all that kind of stuff. All these kinds of teams of all the corporate sponsored supers, all their teams need to have an actual certified hero as their liaison and kind of like a big brother. So that's where Owen finds himself. He's the liaison, the mentor to this group of Corpies that are all, cause he's 40 or something like that. And they're all probably, early 20s, somewhere in there, fairly young and stuff. So he becomes the mentor, big brother, not really dad figure, but that kind of thing to dealing with these people. And because they are corporate sponsored, they're called Corpies. And because people just in general, you know, have a bad taste in their mouth about corporations, because just like real life, corporations are almost always corrupt and they're pretty crappy. So the other supers tend to have a fairly negative opinion about Corpies. They just think, you know, they're corporate sellouts. They're not even like using their powers the way they should be and stuff like that. So, and it's kind of ironic that he goes in with all these misconceptions and preconceived notions and stuff about them, when that's exactly one of the things he's trying to overcome by, you know, joining back into the hero community and all that kind of stuff. And like, so it's a great little setup that Drew created here. It gives him a dynamic he has to deal with, you know, professionally and all that, but the dynamic that he's dealing with also reflects on him personally. So it takes some self-awareness for him to kind of realize and learn his lesson. So I want to keep the rest of this review fairly spoiler free. So I'm going to focus on the pros and cons. I'm going to list 3 cons and 3 pros to basically illustrate the things about the book that I specifically like. And then we'll wrap it up with general summary and thoughts on it. Then we're going to wrap it up with a nice summary and general thoughts on the book. So let's begin. All right, I want to start with the cons so that we can end on the pros and to end on a positive note instead of ending, you know, with the negative stuff. So con number 1. My first con for the story actually has to do with the main character, Owen. Like, Drew does a great job with his characterizations and stuff of characters, but I think it's kind of funny, like, the entire crux of Owen's story, the entire thing of it is about the, basically the scandal, like him getting caught and all this stuff and leaving his family and screwing over his career and basically running and hiding. He ran from Chicago to Denver, like ditched his family, ditched his kids and all that stuff because he couldn't deal with, you know, everything that was going on. So considering the nature of his entire thing, like, I feel like it should be a bigger issue. I feel like for the big, like, inciting incident, I guess, for Owen's entire situation is like him being gay and dealing with all of that. Like, I feel like for that to be the inciting incident, like, it should be a bigger deal. Like, it should be more intrinsically tied into him and his arc and all that kind of stuff in order to make the scandal feel like it matters, because like people had issues with it and stuff. Like people are, you know, homophobic and all this kind of stuff. Like they had issues with it, and that was partially what, you know, drove them, you know, into the shadows or whatever. And granted, it's been 10 years. So there's probably a lot of people who just don't even know anything about it or don't care or got over it and all this kind of stuff. But the way it's played in the story, like, you honestly wouldn't know that Owen is gay if not for like for a character interaction that happens towards the end. And, you know, because you know the story and like you've heard the, you know, nature of the scandal from various different sources or whatever. It just, I don't know if it's supposed to be indicative of the fact that Owen is still hiding and he's still running and all this kind of stuff. But it kind of felt like you made this one of the things, like you hung a hat on it and then ignored it almost. Like that's kind of how it feels to me. So here's a potentially weird comparison. I just recently saw the new Wonder Woman movie, Wonder Woman 84, right? So it's kind of like giving her the golden armor with no reason for her to have it. That's kind of what it feels like. Like Drew gave Owen this thing that he didn't, I mean, he needed to have it in order for the crux of the entire situation to exist, but it didn't have anything to do with his greater arc, and it didn't really, like, I don't feel closure from it. Like, I feel like he could have at least added like a conversation with Owen and his ex-wife, like, cause the way he was able to talk to Roy and Herschel and stuff like that and kind of deal with it and bury the hatch and all this kind of stuff. I wish he would have at least got to talk to his wife and basically apologize for, you know, more just, you know, ditching the family and all this kind of stuff. He could have, even if they were going to get divorced, he could have stuck around and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like that needed some kind of come back around, but like, it's not really a thing in the story at all. So con number 2 would be the superpowers. Like, Drew, this is a spinoff of Superpowers, and Drew has chosen to use the majority of, at least in my opinion, what are fairly familiar type of superpowers, like things like energy absorption and projection and flight and, you know, telekinesis, telepathy and all that kind of stuff. Like fairly what I would consider kind of grounded, if such a thing can exist, you know, grounded superpowers. Like, so it kind of took me aback when I got into this story and some of the characters had these powers that are much more similar to his book, Forging Hephaestus. Because in that book, people have straight up magic and like it's way more, you know, the span and scale of powers is way more vast. But in here, for people to have like summoning type powers and stuff like that are basically conjuring and stuff, like it felt misplaced. It felt out of place. I don't know if that's a result of the fact that Drew hasn't done much, you know, world building outside of the school in the main series. So it, you know, causes that kind of issue. I don't really know, but some of the powers just didn't mesh. It kind of threw the tone off for me a little bit, but that's just me. I don't know if it, you know, have the same effect on anyone else, but it definitely kind of threw me off a bit. And con number 3, my last con would have to be, it's a fairly solid thing and it's a fairly big deal, but I feel like the story itself kind of glosses over it in a way that I can accept it personally. My last con and one of my bigger issues with the book is the final villain. Like, this entire book has a story that's fairly contained. It's Owen dealing with the stuff. He's getting to know the Corpies and stuff, and like he's getting over his issues, and then, you know, they're getting over their issues with him because it's mostly like old guy, get out of here, don't tell us what to do kind of issues. But like, so all of this stuff is happening, but then there's this just kind of random thing that happens at the end and everybody got to kind of go deal with it. And it just felt so tacked on. It felt like Drew was like, well, we need some kind of, you know, climactic something, some kind of climactic situation to happen. So here, let's just throw this out and everybody can go fight. Whereas, in my opinion, I think it would have been so much better because, especially considering the time frame, where this book takes place and the way it overlaps with the regular series, I think it would have been so much better for them to pull one of the main antagonists from the main series into this and have it, you know, have what they did in the third book be something similar to what they do in this book, because it would tie them together and make it feel like more complete world building instead of just this is what's going on and then that's just over there. Like, 'cause that's kind of the vibe that I get right now. So that'll do it for my cons. All right. Those are 3 cons that I have. And now let's talk about the positive stuff. Let's talk about the pros. What are some of the things that I really like about this book? I really like the writing style. Drew has a really good writing style. It reminds me to a degree, it reminds me of Brandon, the way it's almost like no style, like can no writing style be a writing style? Like, is that kind of thing. It's, the story is very contemporary, modern day. So there's really no need for any other, you know, more stylistic kind of writing or anything like that. Along with his writing style comes with the pacing. Like I've talked about in my previous reviews for Superpowers Year 2 and 1. You can catch them. The pacing of the story is clean. Like, I have mild complaint about like the way the ending kind of happened. It kind of throws the pacing off a little bit, but in general, Drew's writing style and his pacing is really well done here. It works really well with his characterizations, apart from my mild issue that I have with Titan, as I mentioned before. But as far as everyone else, they're very developed and stuff, and they're so easy to read. Even the antagonists in this book are written really well. Like, there's some characters that Owen has to deal with, like, while, you know, dealing with all the early part of joining the Corpies and all this kind of stuff. And they even, like, have the people that are antagonistic against him. Like, Drew makes sure that they're understandable. You completely understand where they're coming from. And, like, while they're kind of douchey or whatever, you still get like, okay, yeah, I can see why, you know, you would get to that level and, you know, be kind of heartless and all that kind of stuff. So, it's kind of cool. Like, so it's like really well done. I like it a lot. The fact that you can make a character that I initially didn't like end up really liking that character. And I want more crossovers, because some of the characters from here do cross over back into Superpowers proper. But like I was saying about the big bad and one of the antagonists for the regular series, stuff like that, like more and more crossover to it could be awesome. So pro number 3. My last pro is going to be the main character. So, as I mentioned in the cons, though, the characterization of Owen is a little bit off. I feel like Drew left a little bit on the table. For my pro, I mean him as a main character, period. So, in Superpowers, Drew really works with an ensemble. Like, there's almost no true main character. He will focus on the character while he's talking about this thing or that thing, but there's no actual main character. There's no, we're following this person. you know, exclusively this person instead of, you know, a whole group. So I really like that it's one character that we're following. We're seeing how all the interactions like mesh with that person instead of, you know, interactions meeting with that person versus that person versus that person, then how they interact with, you know, it's that kind of thing. And I like them both. They're both very different. And I like the fact that Drew was able to interject this different style into the series that's already very much set in his ways. And even though I feel like Drew left quite a bit on the table with his characterization of Titan, I really do like everything else about him. Like he, after, you know, some learning and stuff and living life and whatever, he kind of does realize, you know, he's been running away and hiding and all that stuff. And he does like try to work to own up to his stuff and try to do good. And like, he doesn't back down and stuff anymore. So I think it's a lot of really good lessons that can be learned from a character like that. And I think he does that really well, despite leaving some stuff on the table. So that'll do it for my pros and cons. And I can't recommend this book enough to you. This is a great spinoff. It's a good little addition to the superpowered story. It's not quite, I don't like it quite as much as I like the regular series itself, but it's definitely a good read. Good main character, good characterization, good power usage. And that'll do it for my non-spoiler review for Corpies by Drew Hayes. So remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.